Welcome to Financials with Ahau. It's a joy, as always, to be together with you again as we continue to learn towards financial wellness, financial freedom, building wealth. It's a place where I trust we will share nuggets, we will share things that are very key towards the financial journey that you have begun, that you are aspiring to achieve. Now, we began talking about investments in Africa. Last time, we took a run through of just Africa and the different regions that it is divided into. And even as I spoke about it, it was quite interesting for me to think through the depth of how the African continent is divided, the different countries, and the potential that each of these regions carries. So allow me to start with a region that is familiar to me. That is East Africa. That is the region I am from, specifically Kenya. So I'm going to try and remember my history very well. So forgive me where I miss one or two, but let's see. So the countries that comprise this region are Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Rwanda, Burundi, South Sudan, Somalia. I hope I've got everybody covered. Just in case I miss anybody, we will cover them in the next region or in the next conversation. So when I think through each of these countries and just what it means to invest in them and how investment in these countries can grow, it's so important to realize that these are very young economies. Yes, they may have history of, coming into separation from the colonial masters in the last 50, 40, 60 years. And that could seem like, oh, this nation has been here for a while. But we know that economic growth has really spurted in the African continent in the last 20 years. So most of these countries have also had other things that were challenging them and making it a bit more difficult for them to break forth economically. If we look at Somalia, we know how war has torn that country up. And at the same time, there's a University of Somalia that does very well. A few years back, I traveled with two people from Somalia, and you know the Somali which we're told about, that's war torn and all of that, and the country they live in, there was quite something for them to talk about their own country. And they were flying out as representatives for their country and would be back to their country to come back home to deliver what they had learned where they had gone. When we look at South Sudan, we know the history with the oil, the history with North Sudan, and how much it has taken for that country to find its footing. We even know right now there are conversations that are still happening around that country settling. We think of Uganda, we think of a whole landlocked country, but so food rich. The last time I visited Uganda, I kid you not, I came back with 2 kgs in 1 week. Like literally the amount of food that's available in that nation is astounding. The generosity to share it is even more astounding. Then we look at Tanzania, a country that has had a history of social life, a history of really working towards building the people up. A lot of the people spoke only one language, which was just key for them to communicate in their country. But now having people who speak English and additional languages and make it possible for them to engage out of their country. And we come to Rwanda, we know the history of Rwanda. We know how much it has taken to build back. We know how the president currently has worked with his ministers, with just the people and leaders in the nation to create an economy again, to make his nation a hub. I'm told it's a nation where if you litter, my friend, it's not going to go well with you. It's a place I plan to visit. There's Burundi again, language, coming into more languages that can make it and its people accessible. And then we have Kenya. The different challenges Kenya has gone through, we know them. We know the things Kenya is trying to work on, the areas Kenya is trying to build on, the leadership strengths and weaknesses that Kenya has had to face, and that it's continuing to see possibilities to grow when it comes to the economy. So what does this mean for us as investors? What does it mean if you're thinking of each of these countries, and how can you grow its investments there? The key thing is, first, you have to understand the investment laws in each of these countries. If you're a national of that country, of course it is easier for you to invest. I can buy anything anywhere in Kenya. But what are the laws in Uganda? What are the laws in Tanzania? We thank God that in the past few years, there's been an openness in terms of even work. Before, to work in any of these countries, you needed a work permit from the get-go, but there's been a bit of flexibility and ease in terms of transfer of labor. That also means there's an ease in terms of transfer of investment. We have companies that were purely domiciled in Kenya now domiciled in these other countries. That's a plus for the investment potential in those countries. But how do we begin to find our footing in such countries? Here is where we have to take the time to do the due diligence. I want to invest in Uganda. What would I invest in Uganda? If I'm interested in maybe the food industry, how do I find a market in Uganda? Maybe I'm interested in the textile industry, and for me, that's an area of interest. One of the other things I do is to sell African fabric. So, what interest do I have there? How do I build a market there? Do I have contacts? Things like that will become very key in growing investments in that area. If it's in Somali, Somali has one of the biggest shorelines. In fact, that has been cited as one of the reasons why there has been a lot of war in that area, because there has been a desire to control the shorelines, because he who controls what gets in controls what money is available in that economy. So learning these spaces will be very key for us. Understanding each of these countries and the investment opportunities that they carry will be very key to be able to find our own footing. Because we know that we grow by diversifying. If your portfolio only has one place, if anything happens in that region, then you can't grow. So you have to take the courage to diversify your portfolio. That's what I'm going to encourage us today. Begin to ask yourself, how can you diversify your portfolio? What courage can you take within the East Africa region? Based on these economies and what they carry, where they're growing to, where could you consider to put an investment in? Stay with me as we continue to learn this together. It's been a joy to share. Thank you for listening. Until next time.